Super Crooks, the new Netflix anime series created by Studio Bones, based off of the comic book series by the renowned comic creator Mark Millar. If you don't know Mark Millar, you've probably at least heard of the movies based off of his other comic books. He's the creative mind behind Kick Ass and, more notably, Kingsman, and less notably, the other Netflix series Jupiter's Legacy. Now, Super Crooks, as the name implies, is a series about supervillains who use their powers to commit crimes. That's about it. It's pretty simple. To go into more details, the main character of the series is a guy named Johnny Bolt, and it's his story as a supervillain trying to become renowned and gain his own fame amongst the supervillain realm and to get enough wealth to retire with his girlfriend Casey. That's it. Simple story. It's just a heist show, but with supervillains and superheroes battling it out. So it's way cooler than your average heist film. It definitely is written and very much feels like, from the animation and the way it's shot, that it's trying to replicate old time heist movies, which I definitely enjoyed. Like, this felt like it would have come out the same weekend like Shaft or something like that would have come out back in the day. Just has that kind of vibe, especially from the opening. The opening definitely has this really like funky, it's kind of funky fresh, vibe that it's going for with the intro, and I dig it. I really do. It's very fun. And my discount Johnny Bolt cosplay with the beige jacket and the black shirt as he wears in the show. No, don't worry about it. I just wore it because I felt like it looked good for the thumbnail, and here we are now. But that aside, continuing talking about this really cool show. Now, it's not the best. It's not the best anime that I've ever seen. But would I rewatch it? Yeah, would I rewatch the anime? Yeah, sorry. Would I rewatch this anime? Oh yeah, definitely, because it's a ton of fun. Hey, like, it's just really fun, and it's very weird watching it because the characters are written like Americans instead of Japanese people. Because, well, obviously, most animes are about Asians, so they have their own dialect and mannerisms. But the show is written about Americans, so they speak like Americans, sometimes in a way that's a little cringy to see. And it's just like, oh man, is this how other countries think that we speak? I mean, they're not wrong, but also, geez. Specifically, the scene I'm thinking of is that there's a scene early on, I think it's episode 2 or 3, where they show these two, like, rich white girls sitting in a restaurant, and they're waiting for their order, and one of them goes, "Oh my god, this waitress is so sus." And I'm just like, I understand why Asians hate Americans so much. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. I'm just kidding. It's just being hyperbolic. It's just a joke. But, I was just like, damn, I kind of get it now. Because, like, Americans, not always, but sometimes, we're not exactly portrayed the best in Asian media, like in in Squid Game, and at least I've heard, like, in Squid Game and a few web comics that I've read, were portrayed as dickheads a lot, but not in Super Crooks. That was just one cringy scene. Super Crooks were actually written pretty well. They're like American. It's weird. It's weird to describe. Like, if you've seen a lot of anime, then I guess you would understand what I'm trying to get across here. But just act weird. It's just weird seeing Americans just wrong. Sorry, it's weird seeing anime characters act the way they are in Super Crooks, because it's the opposite of what you usually see. For example, in a lot of animes, the main characters are very, like, formal. They only use their last names until they get close and they start using their first names. It's not the way it is. Americans don't do that. We just call each other by our first names all the time. So it's kind of odd in that regard, or in the sense that, like, they're a little more reserved. Like, there are a lot of animes out there, even ones that are specifically targeted for, like, 18 plus. They're like ecchi animes that are supposed to be horny and everything like that. they still reserve themselves. They're like, oh my god, it was an accident that I like face planted into your chest. I'm sorry, miss, it was an accident. But no, that's not how it is in Super Crooks. Like, characters buy hookers. Johnny, like within the first episode, like as soon as Johnny gets out of jail, his girlfriend immediately just like reaches for his crotch, and it's like, oh wow, so this is what we're doing here. I mean, you're not wrong. Americans, we can be horny at times, but I feel like everybody's that way. However, in our media, it's something that we don't really shy away from most of the time. So I get it. I get why they portrayed it that way in Super Crooks, and I did enjoy it. But more into the rest of the show, the animation is great. It's by Studio Bones. If you haven't heard of Studio Bones, you probably heard of My Hero Academia. It's a very popular anime. It's another superhero anime, coincidentally, but obviously they make really good animes, very well animated. So Super Crooks looks really nice, especially when they get into the action scenes and everything like that. It looks pretty cool, and I very much enjoyed it. The story, I have read the Super Crooks comics, and I really like how they integrate the comic into the show. Because for context, the Super Crooks comic is only about 4 issues long. It's a really short series. So when they brought it into the anime, they add more context. The actual story from the comics takes the last like 3 or 4 episodes of the entire season. So the other 8 to 9 episodes are completely original story that's brought in, and it adds way more context to what leads into the story. Because the way the Super Crooks comic starts, it's just like, hey, boom, you're in it, here are all the characters, here's what they're gonna rob, here's the crime, let's go, we're getting into it, and it's just like, oh, all right, we just in this. But in the anime, they have more time to flesh that out. You get to meet more of the characters, and although it's not perfect, not every character gets like really deep, in-depth character development. The only character really who's explored the most is the main character, Johnny. He has the most development throughout the entire series, and you get to have an understanding of him, and you feel more of a connection when he screws up and everything like that. All of the other characters, they serve their purpose. They're entertaining to watch on screen, especially one character called Transmit, who's Johnny's friend. He's not in the series all that often, but he's just really funny because he only says the word yeah in just different tones so you understand how he's feeling. But then at the same time, he's got like a really strong superpower. He can teleport, and he's just not around all that often. So I just found it really funny and entertaining to see. Uh, Something else, honestly, this is probably going to come up a lot from other reviewers and everything like that, but it's going to be compared to The Boys a lot, and I can definitely see that because the world of Super Crooks is very much akin to The Boys. Because the superheroes in Super Crooks, not all of them, but a lot of them are very self-invested. They are egotistical. They don't have a problem harming civilians to get the job done because they just don't really care. And they get that point across really well, and I believe it's episode 2 and 3. Yeah, episodes 2 and 3 really get that across when you see what the heroes do while they're trying to catch the villains, and you're like, wow, these guys are dicks. But honestly, I completely understand that because, like The Boys, Super Crooks needs to get across the point that our characters, the main characters that we are following, are, redeemable in some quality in comparison to the people they're fighting. In this case, the people they're fighting would be superheroes, who usually we follow and agree with because they're always doing the right thing. They're trying to help people. You empathize with them. However, Super Crooks has to make the heroes not infallible. They need to make them flawed. So you can go, okay, yeah, I see these guys, although they help people, they're not the best, and they can probably die under a bus if I really think about it. So I would prefer to see our superheroes who are actually the supervillains doing their thing because they're more redeeming, and although they're self-interested, they're not harming anybody, which is something I did like, is that it's not something that really comes up often, this isn't really a spoiler, but they bring up the point that the super villains in the show, at least the ones that we follow, they don't kill people. So when you see the heroes in the show like harming civilians or causing collateral damage. You're just like, dude, you're stopping a more or less non-violent person right now, yet you're causing all of this carnage, which I found very enjoyable. I did really like the music of Super Crooks. You know, it's very catchy, especially the opening. The opening and the ending is really good. The opening is pretty, like I mentioned, pretty catchy, but also the animation for the opening is super horny. I don't know why it is, but I was just like, oh, okay, wow, this is just what they're doing. I mean, all right, here we are. So I'm still gonna watch the anime. It's still pretty fun, you know. I don't really have a rating for it. I feel like my description of how I felt about it. You know, I enjoyed Super Crooks. It wasn't the best anime I've ever seen, but it was very enjoyable. If I ever wanted to sit down and just watch something for fun, I could see myself putting on Super Crooks again. Or if I ever got one of my friends was like, hey, trying to chill out, just watch some anime, throw on Super Crooks, have a few laughs, see some cool action scenes. I feel like that would be a good time. Um, Now, I don't have to, but I feel like it because Super Crooks was pretty fun, and I want to talk about the spoilers. So, uh, my final thoughts on it. It's enjoyable. You should check it out. You'll probably have some fun. Some of the dialogue is a little bit corny and cheesy, like I said, because they try to replicate, old time heist movies and everything like that. And those were a bit corny, let's be honest. So if you can get past that, I feel like you'll enjoy the series. And I'm gonna get into the spoiler parts now. Not just spoilers for Super Crooks, but I'll also be getting into spoilers for Jupiter's Legacy, the Netflix series, and the comic. Slightly the comic because I didn't finish it. So if you don't want any spoilers, I would suggest you leave now. So I'm going to talk about spoilers. I'm going to say it one more time, talking about spoilers, and here I go. So as I was mentioning earlier, Super Crooks canonically takes place in the universe of one of Mark Millar's other comics, Jupiter's Legacy. If I didn't mention it earlier, that's because I thought it earlier, and then I forgot to say it, so don't call me out on that. But yeah, it takes place in the same universe as Jupiter's Legacy, and the premise of Jupiter's Legacy is it's the Justice League, but super political, so it's not as fun or entertaining, at least in my opinion. It's about it's like 7 or 8 people. They go to this weird island. They all get superpowers, and then they become heroes of America. And over time, more people gain superpowers, and villains start spawning, and everything like that. And over history, it spirals into the current time that we are in now, that we see in Super Crooks. And to be honest, I didn't really like Jupiter's Legacy all that much. It was kind of mid, if I'm telling the truth, because it's just it's not all that interesting. Like I said, it's like the Justice League, but super political. So like all the cool parts of the Justice League, where you're seeing them fight supervillains and deal with all these compelling stories of like keeping their identity secret and working together and everything like that. It's there, but it's not the focus. It focuses more on them trying to hold up the ideal, like the political ideal about how superheroes are supposed to be, you know, the best that they are. And the reason why I bring this up and why I didn't like Jupiter's Legacy all that much is because I think the characters in Jupiter's Legacy are handled really well in Super Crooks because they literally just show up to be cool and then they leave. That's it. It's great. I love it because more context in Jupiter's Legacy, all of the characters from it become immortal when they get their superpowers. So all the 7 characters from Jupiter's Legacy are all alive in Super Crooks, and they have their kids who are also superheroes now, and they're all working together under the Union of Justice, is what they call their version of the Justice League in this universe. And they literally just show up and be cool. That's literally all they do. There's a flashback sequence where they talk about the time that the Union of Justice took down the most powerful supervillain in history, who, for me, I nerded out over because the supervillain is basically just Dr. Fate, but a supervillain. Which, if you don't know who Dr. Fate is, I'm sorry. He's really cool, like wizard superhero from DC Comics. He's not the nicest guy, but he's like super powerful and super weird, and I really like him. But in Super Crooks, they took that concept and they turned him into a supervillain. So he just uses all of his like infinite magical power to like rob banks and do all these villainy things. And it's cool. And then when you meet the guy behind the helmet, he's like this crazy nut job who just walks around and like surprises people and pulls pranks. It's the best because he's like the polar opposite of Dr. Fate. I think it works perfectly. For anyone who gets that reference, they will definitely love Count Orlok. He's a super fun character. Fortunately, he dies, but aside from that, you'll enjoy the character. I would assume if you're in the spoiler section, you either don't care or you've seen it. So if you've seen it, let me know if you like Count Orlok down in the comments, because I really like the character a lot. But anyway, back to the Union of Justice being cool and represented well. They literally just show up in this flashback. You see the Utopian, that's the name of their universe's version of Superman. He shows up. He just has this grin like, oh yeah, we about to throw down. And then they get into this huge fight, and then it cuts, and you just see Count Orlok's helmet like roll on the ground, and I'm just like, that was awesome. And then they show up again in a later episode where they're pulling a heist on the Union of Justice's headquarters. They lure them out by one of the characters, TK. He uses telekinesis to make it appear that a supervillain who was a necromancer came back from the dead and summoned an army of zombies, and he sent them through. And something that I didn't mention earlier in the non-spoiler section that I'll mention here is that they use references from other films and media to make jokes. For example, when they were first describing their plan about how they were going to rob the Union of Justice earlier on in the season, a train drives by, and that's usually how, like in movies, like a train or a car or something like that, some loud noise happens that will cut from whatever the plan is so that you, the audience, can't hear it, and then you'll just see like the characters reacting like, oh, no way, we can't do that, that's ridiculous. But no, in this, when the train goes by as he's trying to describe the plan, he just goes all right, let me try and say that again now that the train's passed. And it happens a couple times, which I found really funny. They use film jokes to get across a prank. The reason I bring this up is back to my point of the zombie apocalypse. There's a shot that's literally just not Left for Dead, Dead Rising, where they're just standing on a car and there's just like one dude's holding the bat and they're just ready to fight. It's just Dead Rising. It's just a shot from Dead Rising. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. I do like it. They reference COD, which I think was really weird because they don't say it right. He says COD zombies instead of COD zombies. I feel like most people just say COD instead of COD, but I don't know. It's a weird nitpick. But while this apocalypse is happening, TK, the guy who's controlling them, he makes a joke saying that, like, yeah, I felt them like running through the streets would be too cliche, so I had them steal a bunch of bikes and like ride through San Francisco. Not San Francisco. They were in Pittsburgh during the scene. Ride through Pittsburgh on bicycles, and then in the news they say it's like, wow, this is like some classic zombie movie, and they're riding through the city on their bikes, and then the Union of Justice shows up to fight. And they have this huge, big, dumb superhero fight where the Utopian shows up to the Necromancer, not realizing he's being controlled by telekinesis, and he's like talking to him, like being all heroic, and he's like, yeah, now I'm gonna send you back to hell. And it's this really well animated scene where the Utopian just like goes and like punches the Necromancer to like crush him into the ground. And in any other series, this would have been like the epic hero moment where the hero takes down the villain and it's all cool and the dramatic music is swelling. But you as the audience know that he's just punching a corpse. That is not actually doing anything, that he's just being pranked right now and he doesn't know it. Yet the scene is still played super serious, and because of that, it comes off as hilariously funny. And I really enjoyed that scene. Like, Union of Justice is just handled so well in this that I wish I liked Jupiter's Legacy more, but I guess it doesn't really matter since the show got canceled on Netflix, and I'm probably never going to read the comic. Well, at least never finish it. Oh well. But more on their plans in the future, because as I mentioned, they integrated the plot of Super Crooks only up until the last quarter of the show, which I can't really talk too much about that without spoiling it. So, good thing, spoiler section. In the original Super Crooks comic, the way it starts is that Johnny Bolt gets out of prison. He goes to meet Casey. She doesn't want anything to do with him, and then he brings up to her that her mentor Carmine, aka the Heat, is in danger. That he tried to scam $100 million from this casino that's run by a supervillain, and that he needs help to pay him back, otherwise he's going to be killed. So then they assemble a team to then rob the most notorious supervillain that exists in the world, the Bastard, or Mr. Matz, as other people call him. Mr. Matz. I'm just going to call him the Bastard. The Bastard has a superhero called the Praetorian who is very morally ambiguous. He's barely a superhero by like the thinnest line. Like he saves people, sure, but then he's also like assaulted people and like killed villains. He's not a good guy at all. He's just someone who's a hero in name. So he works for the bastard as his bodyguard, and the bastard has a ton of money that he wants to save. So not save, but he has a ton of money that he saved up over his years of being a villain. So they're like, all right, we're gonna rob him, and then once we rob him, we'll have enough money to pay off Carmine's debt, and we'll have a ton extra for the rest of us. So then they assemble the team by the second issue, and then something that I like that they handle way better in the anime than they do in the comic book, which is this is a problem that I feel like is, at least because I've read Kick-Ass and I've read the first couple issues of Jupiter's Legacy and Super Crooks. Mark Millar has some heavy-handed takes on certain things. Like in Super Crooks, the comic, they blackmail the superhero called the Gladiator. And the thing is, the Gladiator is a closeted gay man, but he has a wife and a kid. So he, sneaks off and hooks up with guys from dating apps that he meets because he doesn't, want to lose his wife and his kid, but he still wants to live the way that he wants to. So they blackmail him in the comic, and it just like the whole thing is he's like, I don't want people finding out that I'm gay, and that's it. They just blackmail him so that people won't find out that he's gay, and it's just like, okay, I feel like that could have been handled better, and they handle it better in the anime because the moment they bring it up, Johnny's like, dude, no one would care that you're gay, but the real issue here is you would be exposed for being on a date with a supervillain because we have you on camera talking to me and I'm a known supervillain, so that wouldn't really be good for you. I feel like that is more pressing blackmail than the other thing, which I feel like it works better in the anime than it does in the comic, especially since they both end the same way with the Gladiator revealing that he is gay to the world. So like in the comic, it doesn't make any sense. Like it just doesn't work as well for me that like the big thing, the reason why he worked with them and was blackmailed is because he's gay, and then he ends up just revealing himself because he's like, I don't want to get blackmailed again. And it's like, you could have just done that to begin with, and then you wouldn't have had to help these supervillains, which at the end of the day, they just used the Gladiator to fight the Praetorian, which in the comic was just like a one-page thing because, like I said, it's a mini series. It didn't have time to flesh out the fight. In the anime, though, it's super cool. The Praetorian and the Gladiator have like this really awesome fight because in the universe of Super Crooks, the Gladiator is just All Might from My Hero Academia, so he's ridiculously busted. And then when the Praetorian goes to fight him, which for more context, for those of you who are watching this and haven't seen Super Crooks, the Praetorian is a superhero who is like a Jack in the Box. You don't. No, not Jack in the Box. Schrodinger's cat. You don't know what's inside the box, I guess is a better representation. Um, because he has the superpowers to have 200 superpowers, but it's like playing Russian roulette. So he doesn't know which power he's going to get. So it could be something useful, it could be something terrible. In the series, it's kind of used as plot armor a lot of the time because he ends up getting an ability that he can use for that exact moment, except for once. Once he used an ability that was completely useless to him. So whatever, it's not that big of a thing that really like breaks my mind. I'm like, wow, I can't believe it's such terrible. No, it was just fun. But even he is afraid of the Gladiator. Like the Gladiator is just that good of a hero. He's just that strong that this guy who has 200 superpowers, who knows how to use all of them, was that afraid of this guy. And then they get into a fight and he gets bodied. And I love the joke that's executed afterwards is that Johnny's like, Gladiator, what the hell? You weren't supposed to kill him. He's like, no, I didn't kill him. He might have some brain damage, but he's not dead. And everybody's just like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. He's not dead, cool. Brain damage, yeah, I can live with that. Let's go. It's just, that was pretty funny. I did enjoy that. Casey is really strong. I mean, well, she's like in the middle, I would say, because she's uh, telepath, but I'd say like the most broken telepath is like like Jean Grey and Professor X from X-Men. So she's like below them. She's probably like an A class, telepath in that regard because she can't like manipulate people from like across the planet or anything like that. But anyone who she can manipulate is just willing to do whatever she says. Like at the beginning of the series, when Johnny and his friends go on a crime and the Praetorian's about to catch them, she just mind controls the Praetorian to just become best friends with them. And he's like, "All right, guys, make sure you never commit a crime again. I'll see you later." And he just flies off into the sky, and I'm just like, "Oh, oh, just like that. All right, cool. Damn, you. That's a really helpful ability right there. Um, all right, a little scared of you, but you know what? That's still pretty cool. Um, what I say my favorite character is I really like the Ghost, but I think Forecast is probably my favorite character. He's just a chill dude who can control the weather. Like that's it. He just lives life by the skin of his teeth, just using his weather abilities to get by from day to day. He just kind of vibes with whatever's going on, and I kind of dig that. He's just super chill. Like him and and Transmit are probably the best characters in the show, just because they're just fun to enjoy on screen. They're not the most well written. They're just there. They have some fun. That's about it. You just enjoy them on screen, and that's how I feel. And if you disagree with me, well, that's unfortunate, but that's how I like, Super Crooks. I enjoyed it. The characters who have the best action though throughout Super Crooks are probably the Diesel brothers because they have like Deadpool's healing factor and amped up to 11. So like anytime their body parts get cut off, they just regrow back. So they're able to have these brutal fight scenes where they're just getting torn to shreds, and like all the heroes that they fight can just go all out without holding anything back, and then they just sprout back up and they keep scrapping. And I think it's just really great. This is a really well executed fight scene between Roddy Diesel and the Gladiator on top of a plane, and that was a really cool fight scene. I really enjoyed that. Um, yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, I'm just kind of just gushing over the show right now because I enjoyed it. There's nothing else like in depth, that I really want to get into that I could think of. Yeah, no, that's about it. So I enjoyed Super Crooks. I hope you did as well. Obviously, if you're in the spoiler section, if you are in the spoiler section and you haven't seen Super Crooks, I hope that me, rambling about it changed your mind a bit. And remember, folks, you are innocent until proven villainous, and I will catch you in the next video.